this episode has the potential to be maybe the most important Mandalorian rewatch episode before The Mandalorian and Grogu, simply because of this Shadow Council scene that is in this particular episode. And, you know, we're recording this a little ahead. So, you know, by the time you're listening to this, we recorded this almost 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So I do want to warn you, we might actually have this information by the time you're listening to this. But if we're right, it's going to sound like we're super smart, and we guessed it before that information came out. So we got some images from the Empire magazine that were not in the trailer, and it's actor Johnny Coyne, who was in the Shadow Council. He's the bald guy that is part of the Shadow Council, and he is sitting, and it looks like he's watching the gladiator fights with Grogu in a cage. Yep. Right? And so he's an Imperial in the Shadow Council, and there's potential that this guy is a very important guy from the expanded universe before Disney acquired Star Wars, and a pretty important warlord. I'm not going to spoil it just yet. We'll get into it in the breakdown. But Jon Favreau did say you're gonna be really interested in what this guy's name is. So
definitely could be teasing a Legends connection, bringing in a character from the EU into canon, or it could be if it's not kind of who we're thinking, it could just be that like this character's related to somebody important or something like that too. But I the more we go down the road that we've been thinking and speculating about that guy, I think we're on to something there.
I think so too. I think it's pretty close, even if it's maybe not exactly who we're thinking. But keep listening to find out. Also, we are going to do another contest, a 5-star review contest in celebration of Maul Shadow Lord and The Mandalorian and Grogu coming out. And we want to become the most reviewed Star Wars podcast in the world. And we are so close to it. We're like 30 reviews away. And I know there's 30 of you out there who haven't done this yet. And it will take just 5 minutes of your time to do this. All you got to do is go to Apple Podcasts, find our podcast by searching Star Wars, click on our podcast, give us a 5-star review. Inside the review, you need to mention Dathomir. That's our code word for Maul Shadow Lord, because the connection there.
Also, there's a slight connection to the theory we're going to throw out later.
Yeah, maybe. And so make sure you put that in your review, and then screenshot your review, email it to mandalorianwatch@gmail.com, and you will be entered into our contest, which ends on May 1st. You've got to get that in by May 1st as of right now. That could change. So make sure you get that in as soon as you can, and then we will announce the winner on our May 5th or May 4th episode as we discuss the finale of Maul Shadow Lord. And this is a Maul Legacy lightsaber set. So you get his lightsaber, you get the amazing case that goes with it, a stand, all of it. It's priced at $245 on the Disney Store. Man, this is so worth it for just not even 5 minutes of your time to go help us out. And becoming the most reviewed Star Wars podcast in the entire world. That would be a huge, huge help. So go do that. You could win. Super fun. Also, I think it's important that we mention our schedule is changing slightly as we get closer and closer to The Mandalorian and Grogu and Maul Shadow Lord. As you know, we've kind of hit hyper speed on this particular rewatch of The Mandalorian. We're almost finished. We're going to be doing our finale with Sky Talkers, and I'm so excited to have them on. They're like probably our most requested guest in terms of like, hey, you guys need to do a collaboration. You guys need to do something together. It's finally happening. We're going to be doing the finale with them. And so that's going to be your next episode. But then we're going to start to switch gears a little bit, get you excited and pumped and ready for Maul Shadow Lord. And then when Maul Shadow Lord is out, you're going to get 2 episodes a week. You're going to get our breakdowns of the 2 episodes Right now, they're scheduled for every Tuesday. That could change depending on things that happen. But as of right now, it's going to be on every Tuesday. And then on Saturdays, you're going to get a Mandalorian and Grogu hype episode. Now, those will be called slightly different every episode. But basically, we're going to be talking about the Mandalorian and Grogu every Saturday for about 30 minutes of your time. Yeah. Get you ready for the movie, get you hyped. You can even call into our voicemail hotline, give us some of your theories, your thoughts, and you could make it onto the show.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff on those episodes. Maybe doing some, little segments on important characters. Maybe Imbo or Road to the Hutt. That kind of thing. And then any news that comes out about the production, any details that are revealed. Of course, we'll be running all those down, all that kind of stuff. So look forward to those. But you are listening to Children of the Watch. I'm Mac Lacey.
And I'm Alex Maxwell, and today we are continuing with the Mandalorian Rewatch with Season 3, Chapter 23, The Spies, and we are so close to the Mandalorian and Grogu. I cannot wait for this movie. It's going to be incredible, and if you're new to our podcast, we break down every single episode of Star Wars television scene by scene to analyze the story, find comfort Easter eggs, and explain how it all connects to the larger Star Wars universe. And like we said at the top of this episode, this particular episode might just be the most important episode we've done so far in our rewatch for The Mandalorian and Grogu because of a particular scene.
Yeah. It's a huge one. We have a lot of sifting through some fine details to do on this episode. We're going to definitely have to camp out on that Shadow Council scene because I think, like you said up top, there's maybe no more important episode of The Mandalorian to discuss when we're talking about the movie. There's no way that some of this doesn't tie directly into what we're going to get on the big screen.
It has to. It has to. So let's not waste any time. Let's jump into this episode. This is a great episode.
Yeah, and I did not remember a lot of the finer details from my first watch of it. This is maybe my only third time total watching it, and I think both of my other watches were kind of right when it came out. So it's been a long time, but I was just so surprised at all of the scale, the scope of this episode. I definitely, there's some things that I've been talking about over the course of our rewatch of we don't have these answers or they haven't addressed any of this, that we actually get a lot of, some of those answers that I've just forgotten about.
Yeah.
In terms of chronology for, some Children of the Watch stuff or the Purge of Mandalore and all that kind of stuff. So huge lore heavy episode, but there's also tons of amazing action set pieces and all of that. So
right. So our director is Rick Famuyiwa, who's kind of like, if the Mandalorian is a triumvirate of creators, he's one of them, right? Yeah. It's John, it's Dave, it's Rick. Those three are the leaders of the Mandalorian in my mind. Like, if Jon Favreau ever wanted to step away from The Mandalorian and they wanted to continue The Mandalorian, I would think that Rick Famuyiwa is the guy who takes over.
Yeah, absolutely. He's really put his fingerprints on the franchise. He's one of the most key directors. He's got a lot of the most pivotal episodes, he has been in charge of. So, definitely he's up there in the, I like kind of how you framed it in a triumvirate. I like that.
Yeah. So let's start this episode. We get a recap, of course, recapping everything from the previous weeks. And then we open up on Coruscant and the episode begins on this rainy night. I love this particular look of Coruscant in this episode. I think it looks so cool, dude.
I do too. This is like, it's, we're not in the lower levels or anything like that of Coruscant, but this is still like not the best part of town, right? It's kind of maybe the older part of downtown Coruscant, so to speak. But it's really cool. It reminds me a lot of like LA in Blade Runner with all of the, like, I love the Orabesh neon signs and all of that. It's one of my favorite looks at Coruscant we get.
It's so good, dude. And so the tone is intentionally noir, right? Dark alleyways, there's mist, secrecy, and Elia Kane walks through the city wearing a trench coat, acting cautiously. She's got a vibe about her that is just kind of cool. I know she's a bad guy, but she's a good bad guy.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
And we enjoy watching Elia Kane on screen.
Yeah, she's good. She's good. So she enters a quiet alleyway and waits, and then an Imperial probe droid emerges from the fog and scans her to confirm her identity. Once verified, a hologram of Moff Gideon appears, and Kane gives the hologram a report. And so she informs Gideon that the pirates on Navarro have been defeated. So it almost feels like
it's confirming that it's a connection. Like what Carson Teva was kind of proposing is like, it seems like maybe all these things, there's more of a connection to them than we think. It's true. Like this confirms that he's on the right track there.
Right. And so it's like Gideon and probably not just Gideon, but the Shadow Council itself pushed the pirates to do these things.
Yeah.
Which is very important heading into the Mandalorian and Grogu, right? It's showing kind of this new version of the Empire, this Imperial remnant is much more willing to work with the underworld than probably Palpatine's Empire was, even though they sometimes did.
Yeah, I mean, the Palpatine's Empire certainly doesn't have a completely clean record in that regard, but they did have a vested interest in that the appearance of order, and like they had to stand against the criminal element and pirates and all of that kind of stuff to assert themselves as this an authoritative institution that's worthy of maybe sacrificing a little freedom for like the order and protection they provide, right? This version of the Empire, the remnant, they're scattered. They've kind of become the underdogs. Like they don't have that appearance to keep up anymore. They can get really messy with it. They can work with pirates and the underworld in a more open way because like they're just trying to scrape back some power. They're not trying to keep themselves on top like Palpatine's Empire was.
Right. Yeah, in some ways that can be more dangerous.
Yeah.
Especially to a fledgling New Republic, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and I'm excited to see how that plays out in the movie. So he's even more surprised to learn that Din Djarin and Bo-Katan led a faction of Mandalorians that included members of his old covert, and from Gideon's perspective, those factions should not be working together. Part of me wonders if that divide that wedge happened because of some propaganda from Gideon himself.
We're talking about an ISB agent, right? So Black Ops, espionage, PSYOP, disinformation campaigns. These are all within his toolbox.
Yeah. And of course, these are all just fantasy. None of this would ever happen in real life.
Right. No. Nothing like that ever happens.
Never.
But it almost seemed like he had written off the Mandalorians in a way because he knew that they were not going to be able to organize together. He had that like taken for granted in his head. So I would not be surprised if he had done something, to ensure that these two groups hated each other. It's kind of impossible to say because I think even without Gideon's influence, obviously these two factions have beef that goes back a long way. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. He's an ISB agent. It's not beyond his capability.
I would love like maybe a novel from his perspective. Like even like a first person novel, like detailing his life from, joining the ISB all the way to this moment. You know what I mean?
His in-universe memoirs that he wrote or something. Yeah. I'd like that. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. So Gideon orders Kane to continue her work within the New Republic and gathering intelligence. And then the camera shifts perspective and we see Gideon physically for the first time in the episode and really for this season.
Yeah.
The mustache is gone.
Mustache is gone.
That could be an indicator that this isn't actually Gideon Prime.
Yeah. It's so we gotta start defining some terms here. We gotta explain this. I texted Alex. I was like, I forgot about Mustache Gate, and not the Henry Cavill one. Yeah. So as part of Moff Gideon's whole thing last time we saw him, he's got the mustache, and there's also just like. This particular version of Gideon is kind of carrying himself a little bit differently. I don't know. There's just something about him.
A little more mustache twirling.
Yeah.
A little more showy.
Even though he doesn't actually have the mustache to twirl.
That's true.
But I agree. There's something a little more theatrical about Gideon post-return. So Alex and I kind of we've talked about this in the past. I think it's totally possible that we see different Gideons at different points. Basically, we know he's big into cloning technology and researching all of that. A lot of his projects and schemes have cloning kind of at the center of them. I think it's totally possible that Gideon may have died at some point, or maybe he. There's maybe he's kind of in a bunker somewhere letting his proxy sort of act in his place, and it's that's a clone Gideon, and Gideon Prime is in a bunker somewhere.
Remember back in season 1, they were talking about Gideon I thought he was executed.
Yeah. Like almost everybody had already assumed that had happened. So maybe it did. And the Gideon we've been seeing
They're just clones,
and we don't know how many there are.
We're about to see several.
Yeah,
we're about to see several. So yeah, he is inside an underground Imperial facility, and then based on the full episode context, it appears that this base is on Mandalore itself. Right? You don't know that when you're watching it right here and then, but you can guess that because of the Beskar troops.
Yeah.
Gideon walks along a ray-shielded catwalk. This is very similar to what we see in Mount Tantus, in the very inner sanctum of Mount Tantus in the Bad Batch season 3, kind of those final episodes. Again, there's a connection there, and this came out before the Bad Batch, but they were kind of working on it around the same time. Dave Filoni wants us to make those visual connections of hey, what he's doing here is connected to what's going on in Mount Tantus. Yeah. And again, I think that's another indicator of that's endgame. We might even see some aspects of that within the Mandalorian and Grogu. We haven't seen any evidence of that from what they've shown us, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be present within the movie.
Right. Gideon in the Bad Batch, does he have a mustache?
So Gideon's not in the Bad Batch.
Oh, I thought he made an appearance.
No, I wish.
Okay. I thought
a young Gideon.
I need to like Dave Filoni encouraged the suit actors for Din. I probably also need to rewatch some of the Bad Batch in preparation for the Mandalorian and Grogu.
I think so. I think that would be helpful for everybody. So on both sides of him are rows of Imperial troopers wearing Beskar armor. Again, these kind of represent the next evolution of Imperial troops and visually resemble Dark Troopers adapted into Mandalorian-style armor.
Yeah, they also give First Order Stormtrooper a little bit, just the way that the helmets are shaped and stuff. I don't know. I like it.
I do too. Obviously they look like Imperial Super Commandos from when we saw them in Star Wars Rebels with the Mandalorian episodes, right?
Right. And very similar to the original concept designs for that ended up becoming Boba Fett that were when that design was originally intended for Imperial Super Commandos.
Right.
So, there's a whole cyclical. Yeah, it's like poetry. It rhymes.
I've never heard that before. That's incredible. That's a good saying. Before entering the command chamber, Gideon walks past several large tanks.
Yeah.
Vats.
You know.
Vats. Ooh, yeah, vats is a better word. He walks past very green liquidy vats. Each tank is filled with murky liquid. Inside each one appears to be a humanoid body suspended in fluid. We don't actually know it from this episode. We learn in the next episode that these are all Gideons, right? This episode does not explain what these are, but strongly suggests cloning experiments or an evolution of the Dark Trooper program.
I think both.
I think he's trying to give those clones force powers, which again would, I think, lead to Snoke. And we're about to talk about Snoke a little bit with Project Necromancer and all of that.
Not to jump ahead too much, but in his kind of villain monologue here at the end of the episode, he does explain that he's trying to mix, he's trying to make an army with Beskar armor with troops inside them that have a mix of all these different traits. So I do think kind of the Dark Trooper program, that's his ultimate end game, is the Beskar coming from the Mandalorians being the exoskeleton, and then Jedi Force stuff going on with the people inside the suits.
Yeah, it's crazy, dude. So Gideon enters a room where a holographic meeting is already underway, and this is our first look at the Imperial Shadow Council, a secret group of surviving Imperial warlords coordinating the remnants of the Empire. Now, this was first introduced to us, I've got it right here, in Aftermath trilogy, the Shadow Council. They kind of form that within those books. This is almost like an upgraded version of that.
I mean, it's definitely it's not the same people around the table that we see in Aftermath,
except one of them.
Not all of them. And I think there may be some overlap there, but this is the whatever becomes of that group, I think. The only other way that you could kind of organize it is that there have been different shadow councils that have all been organized, kind of coordinating different parts of the remnant. And this is just a different one. But it's the same exact idea. And there's several key figures around this particular table. Brindle Hux is is it Armitage?
It's
Brindle.
No,
okay.
Armitage is our fun Hux.
Redheaded space Hitler.
Yeah.
I can't remember their first names all the time.
I'm
Brindle,
the spy.
Yeah. It's interesting that Brindle is here and Moff Gideon's kind of, he's engaged in kind of the next evolution of Imperial Trooper kind of deal. And Brindle Hux becomes leader of the Stormtrooper program for the First Order. So I can definitely see how, maybe at some point he takes over what Gideon's doing. If Gideon, I don't think he's going to make it out of the Mandalorian events, but, whenever those do end, if that's here in the Mandalorian and Grogu or in a future, if he makes it to fight alongside Thrawn or something in a later event.
Yeah, we'll see. So one of the Imperial leaders begins by explaining that the New Republic is vulnerable, but warns that the Imperial remnant must be careful not to reveal its strength too early. Another Imperial officer interrupts and criticizes him for saying that while plundering hyperspace lanes for resources. This is the guy that's going to be in the movie, The Mandalorian and Grogu. And we think, and again, we're recording this 2 weeks in advance, so this information could already be out. We think that this guy is from the expanded universe novels of Rogue Squadron.
Yeah.
And this is Imperial Warlord Zsinj. And this is maybe the canon version of him. Because what we do know from Zsinj in those books is that he's very much like a hit and run type Imperial, very much kind of doing the tactics like the rebellion might do. And what is being described even right here of his tactics kind of match up.
Yeah.
And he was known to work with Underworld as well. It just kind of lines up a little bit of like, this might be a canon version of Zsinj.
Yeah, there's even in his Legends material and stuff, there's a big connection to Dathomir that he has. A lot of like his great exploits happened around Dathomir and that kind of thing. So with Thrawn, being there, as far as we know, at the beginning of Ahsoka season 2, I could definitely see how, he could come back into play in that way.
I mean, he could be reporting directly to Thrawn at this point.
Exactly. And if you would like to look up a little bit more information for yourself about this character, to spell the name, it is Zsinj. Zsinj. But it's like Zsinj, but with a little zest on the beginning. Little oomph. Yeah. Just a little razzle dazzle.
Yeah, throw that on there. Throw that Star Wars razzle dazzle on there. Yeah. This immediately creates tension between the members of the council. So you can see, they don't. Pelion. So we're about to talk about Gilead Pelion, who is another character from the EU. Huge character. One of my favorite EU characters, to be honest with you. Because, like, if there is a noble. In the EU version, I don't know about this canon version, but in the EU version, if there is a noble Imperial, this is the guy. This is the guy that you could negotiate with and potentially like work out a peace treaty, which they do in the EU. This is the guy. And so he is Thrawn's right-hand man. And so the mustached Imperial responding to criticism is Gilead Pelion, and before his name is even spoken, the betrayal makes it clear who he's meant to be. He's a major character from the Star Wars expanded universe, longtime ally of Grand Admiral Thrawn, kind of his right-hand man, kind of the guy that gets things done for Thrawn. And Pelion explains that their strength must be preserved carefully. He also states this: the return of Grand Admiral Thrawn will herald the reemergence of the Imperial military. So according to Pelion, Thrawn's return will also give Brindle Hux enough time to complete Project Necromancer. So it feels like, even though we didn't get this indication from Ahsoka Season 1, that Thrawn is still pulling the strings, even in a galaxy far, far away. In a different galaxy, he is relaying messages to Pelion, and we know that he was relaying messages to Morgan Elsbeth from Season 2, right? Like, kind of directing. And like I would imagine Elsbeth was the one giving that information to Pelion, right? And via the Dathomirian witch connection.
Right. I think that would be the only one, because they don't have the technological means to send, like, to transmit a hologram or whatever to another galaxy. But I think the Dathomirian witches could certainly probably commune, through the weird sorcery they've got somehow. So yeah, I think maybe, Thrawn's talking through the witches we see in Peridia to Morgan Elsbeth, and she's relaying the rest of that information to the Shadow Council.
Right. And now that she's been captured at this point in the timeline, I could see Pelion being kind of like, no, I promise he's coming. Everyone hold it together. Let's not, because like this is a very loose confederation of Imperials who all kind of want to do their own thing. Obviously, Gideon's making a play to be the guy in charge here, especially with what happens in this conversation. But like, he's trying to keep everything together, and all of them kind of have their own vision of what the Empire should be.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, all of these people, I think as soon as they can work together long enough to get back on top in their eyes, I think every single one of them knows then it's, they're back to fighting each other.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's really interesting. I definitely think that, maybe Morgan Elsbeth being captured is why, they haven't gotten any more of those messages and that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's cool the way that they're setting this up, and I mean, if our speculation is correct, it's almost like Din and company, or Ahsoka, or just our Mandoverse heroes are kind of having to face off against each member one by one. Gideon has been a big deal so far, but if Zsinj ends up being a big player in The Mandalorian and Grogu, it's like he's kind of the next stop, you know?
It's like
they gotta go
these mini bosses.
exactly, and then they all kind of stack up to Thrawn in the end.
Right.
So I like how that's all shaping up.
I do too. I really, really like it. And I think, the including Brindle Hux in this scene is so good, right? Because it sets up the sequel trilogy really well. It sets up what's going on with the First Order. It gives us those first little hints, right? So Brindle Hux is the father of Armitage Hux from the sequel trilogy. He's heavily associated with the future First Order. In the meeting, Hux is focused entirely on Project Necromancer. And this project is clearly something extremely important to the Imperial Remnant and likely tied to cloning technology. We do know that because of Bad Batch Season 3. They do talk about Project Necromancer with what was going on in Mount Tantus, right? So all that is like... It's interesting because they are almost saying, like, we need to create our leader.
Yeah.
Like, and part of me, again, we talked about this with Gustavo back in chapter 19, The Convert, like Thrawn being a huge factor of that, of like, maybe Thrawn just wants to be in the background in the shadows pulling the strings and have someone be a figurehead, and you could have Snoke, your creation, be that figurehead, but then things get out of hand because you made him a Force user. You know what I mean?
And like he ends up being a true Sith, in his own right. I definitely that's how that seems to be going from where I'm sitting. I definitely think it's like, they're suggesting that maybe instead of waiting on Thrawn and all this stuff, let's just go ahead and cut out the middleman. Let's make the guy that we're trying to ultimately have.
Right. And, ultimately it's leading to a new creation of Palpatine. Right.
But I don't even know. I'm going back and forth if that's even the intended goal always, or if that's just what it ended up. Like if that's what ended up happening, like Snoke may have been the intended end game, and like you said, it just didn't go the way they wanted.
I think it's two different things. I think the intention was Palpatine, and I think we know that because of the Bad Batch Season 3, if I'm remembering everything correctly. But again, I think Thrawn,
I need to go rewatch that.
Thrawn, I think, maybe has different aims and goals and maybe create something different, even though the intention was to do Palpatine. Does that make sense? So I think that's where it diverges, because Thrawn was not a part of Palpatine's plan.
Right.
And so I could see, whatever ends up becoming the First Order turning on Thrawn, because that's not Palpatine's end goal, because Thrawn is a threat to what Palpatine wants to ultimately do. Like, if Thrawn is successful, the Empire's back under his control.
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll see. I don't know. It's all very exciting. So Gideon finally speaks and questions why Grand Admiral Thrawn is absent from the meeting. And he asks when Thrawn will finally participate in the Shadow Council. And everyone turns to Pelion for an answer. Pelion replies that their success relies entirely on keeping Thrawn's return secret. Gideon responds skeptically. He calls himself a master of secrets, and he has yet heard of any whispers of Thrawn's return. Like, he hasn't heard anything.
Yeah, he's like, this is what I do. I'm the information rumor whisper guy, and I haven't heard anything. So
yeah, right, exactly. And so this moment kind of establishes a subtle rivalry between Gideon and Thrawn's supporters, which is fun.
I think we knew that, right? I think Gideon seems too big for his britches in whatever role he's in, whatever part of the hierarchy he's occupying, he's not going to be satisfied. He's just going to want the next thing and more and more and more, which that's not really how Thrawn is. And I definitely think that Gideon and Thrawn, if again, I think Gideon could still be in.
Yeah, he could still be a factor.
He could still be a factor later in the
we have
story.
No idea.
Just because of all the cloning wackiness. I could see them really butting heads, and them almost having to have a little civil war amongst themselves.
Yeah. That'd be fun. That would be a lot of fun. So Gideon argues that waiting for Thrawn may be a mistake, and he suggests that perhaps it is time for new leadership within the Imperial Remnant. And this is where we get that line from Brindle Hux, because he interjects and says Project Necromancer is in place for that.
Yep.
So the line strongly implies that Project Necromancer may involve resurrecting, number one, or recreating leadership through cloning. Again, I think that's going to end up being Snoke and Palpatine, maybe on diverging paths. So Hux asked Gideon about the research that they were promised from Dr. Pershing, and Gideon explains that because Pershing was captured by the New Republic, the research has been lost. However, Hux clearly knows about Gideon's previous experiments on Navarro, which seemed to be like not a part what he was doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Kind of, under the radar of his own designs. I mean, Gideon's got ulterior motives no matter who you are working with him, right? Because I think Gideon's just a me, myself, and I kind of deal. He's going to do what's best for Gideon, always.
He's always going to do what's best for him. So Gideon reframes the discussion. Instead of arguing about leadership, he focuses on a common enemy. And he explains that the Mandalorians are planning to retake Mandalore. And this immediately gets everyone's attention at the council, right? They're all like, ugh. That's not good. That's not good.
I think it's, they had, like, going back to our, could Gideon have done some kind of psyop to keep the Children of the Watch and to keep Mandalore divided? I definitely think he was at least counting on, them being a splintered group. So I think, them being able to work together and come together and unite is not in anyone's plan. So everyone is just groaning because Mandalorians are a problem for the Empire and have always been historically.
It's not good. So Gideon asked the council for additional military resources. It's interesting. Again, it seems like Pelion and Hux are the guys that are actually in charge of the council because Gideon's having to ask them.
They've at least got the resources. Like maybe they've got the largest fleets or whatever it is. They seem to have the most cachet, even if they're not like the head of the table. I don't know if there is a formal head of the table here.
Thrawn would be it, but he's not there yet.
Right.
So Gideon asked for 3 Praetorian guards because he's worried about an assassination attempt. More TIE interceptors, additional TIE bombers. The amount of times he says, the interceptors and the bombers, so dramatically. He says it so many times in this episode. When asked why he needs such forces, he explains the Mandalorian threat, and the council immediately approves his request. And then Gideon concludes the meeting with the declaration, "Long live the Empire!" And he's just, it's very dramatic. He's, him and Grief Karga probably would be good friends if they were on the same side.
They're different sides of the same coin.
Yeah, they're very dramatic people. So this scene reveals that the Imperial Remnant is organized. Their apparent disunity is a deliberate strategy, and the future First Order is already being planned here, right?
Yeah. I think the point about like their apparent disunity being a strategy is super apparent when, you look at how unseriously the New Republic is taking any threats of the Imperial Remnant. I think they're just like, no, we won. They're done. They're not going to be a problem anymore. Look how scattered and disorganized they are. And I can definitely see how the First Order rises to power in that in the face of the New Republic, just because it's not taken seriously.
Yeah. And so, we spent a lot of time on that particular scene because I think it's going to be super important, not just to the Mandalorian and Grogu, but like I think everything going forward, right? Ahsoka season 2 that comes out later this year. I think it's really important to that. I think it's going to be important to that big crossover event that's eventually going to happen. But we finally kind of transition from that to Navarro.
It's like, now that we've talked for 40 minutes on the first 7 minutes of this 53 episode.
Yeah, let's run through the rest of this.
Yeah, let's hyperspeed it.
Yeah. So the Mandalorian fleet arrives over Navarro, and citizens briefly panic. Obviously, before Greef Karga reassures them that the ships belong to the Mandalorians. The giant mythosaur skull on the bottom of it probably gives it away.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a tell.
But how cool is that? How do you like that? That is so. How did they paint that? Number one, I guess maybe droids.
I mean, it's probably easier in 0G, if you're just up in orbit doing. Well, does paint work in 0? I have no idea.
Yeah, because you got to spray it. But from the Acolyte, fire is it just burns normally in space, right?
Yeah. I mean, so Star Wars doesn't have our physics. That's not the rules of that world.
I mean, there's sound in space. There's all sorts of things.
Yeah. Right? Starships sink like they've like sea ships.
As they should.
Orbit. Yeah.
As that. You know what? We've never been to space. Who's to say all this doesn't actually happen?
There's never been a Star Destroyer. We don't know.
Exactly.
We don't know how any of this works.
Yeah. I can't say for a fact that that's not the case. I haven't experienced it. So the cruiser displays a massive mythosaur skull painted on its underside. And then we get their reunion of the tribes. The children of the Watch gather on the lava flats. Bo-Katan's Mandalorians arrive. There's clear tension between the two groups. And then immediately, Axe Woves, our dude, Axe, just an antagonizer, removes his helmet. I was like, of course. Here we go.
Yeah,
we're gonna rip this Band-Aid off right now and see how we do. And so all the other Mandalorians behind him follow, and the armorer interrupts the tension by striking her forge tools together and formally welcoming them. She kind of like, listen, they're cool. Everyone calm down. I know what we've said about them in the past. Everybody's
had
everything's
a whole
fine.
6 episodes of character development for all of us over here. We're all good now.
Everything's cool.
Yeah, that we have healed the great schism of Mandalore.
Yeah. So she declares that a feast will be prepared. And at first, when we cut to the feast, I was really worried that they had killed those baby raptors for the feast. But it's the swooping things from season 1.
That's good. That's good because I really thought they were the baby raptors.
No, the baby raptors are eating good here too, I think.
That's good.
So Greef reveals that IG-11 has been rebuilt as IG-12, a mech suit controlled by Grogu. The Anzellans, who we will see in The Mandalorian and Grogu, remove the memory circuit, and Grogu pilots the suit using 2 buttons, yes and no.
Yeah.
And Grogu immediately begins exploring and causing trouble. And I love this scene because it's so like, yes, this is exactly how a toddler acts.
Yeah.
This is a good scene, despite me not liking that this is IG-11/IG-12, because there should already be an IG-12 because there's an IG-88.
Right. Yeah, the designations don't make any sense there. But, the good things about the scene are amazing. Grogu's so cool here. Love the using the yes and no buttons to communicate. And it's
Din's like, you can't do this, and he's like, yes.
Yeah, it's immediately like when you give a young kid a toy that makes a ton of noise that they love. Yeah. You immediately get sick of it. But they're like, no, yes, again.
Yeah.
And it's all the same. And just him wobbling around the office and working a little mech suit is great.
It is great.
It's fun.
And it's showing his growth. Now we do know from what Kathleen Kennedy has said about The Mandalorian and Grogu is not going to speak in the movie unless she's giving us a huge fake out.
I mean,
it's possible. But I agree with that. I don't think we should hear a baby Grogu speak. I think when, if we ever see him in the future, go at it. Sure.
Yeah.
But baby version, let him be baby, right? Let him be baby. Because I think.
Bad baby.
Well, how would you make it? How would you make his voice sound? And how would he talk? Would he talk normal? Would he talk like Yoda?
Yeah.
There's too many factors that are going to be more distracting than satisfying in my mind.
I guess I see where you're coming from, there. I still think it's I think we'll get like one word, something. But we'll see.
Kill. He'll say kill.
I think if you had just introduced IG-11 back into the show right here, nothing would really be different. I don't think we needed to bring him up in
the first
episode. Like, I don't think we needed to do, like, there was no, like, we could have just taken R5 to Mandalore in the first place, come back, and, the Anzellans have just made this thing because Grief told them to,
Yeah, because Din is more comfortable around this type of droid than...
Because it's not, there's no AI going on in there. It's a vehicle, not like a thinking thing. Yeah, exactly. It's a Grogu Gundam, and we love that.
Grogu Gundam. So we cut back. We go to the feast that night, and that night Bo-Katan gathers the Mandalorians and outlines their strategy. They're going to return to Mandalore. They're going to establish a perimeter at the Great Forge, and once secured, they will bring the fleet down. And she asks for volunteers for a scouting party from both tribes, and the volunteers include Din Djarin, Grogu, Axe Woves, Koska Reeves, Paz Vizsla, and then several others. But the big one, I think, was the Armor also volunteers. Now, at the time, we thought this episode's called The Spies, right? Like, there's a spy among them. Who can we trust? We were thinking maybe we can't trust the Armor because she has such a, like, face turn on other Mandalorians.
Right.
But what it was actually referring to was just like them going down and scouting out the area. That it had nothing to do with anybody betraying anyone.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have called this the Scouts, or
the Scouts could have been
or
good.
the Scout,
like, or just like the approach, or like the landing. So I don't know. Yeah. Just there's a lot of things you could have done, but the Spies is evocative, and it got us talking at the time, so it did its job.
Sure did. So the scouting party lands on Mandalore's devastated surface. The planet remains heavily damaged from the Night of 1,000 Tears, and they begin traveling across the wasteland towards the ruins of Sundari. And then, suddenly, a sail barge approaches, carrying Mandalorian survivors. Now, I think this is so cool.
It's so cool. There's so many, analogs to like Vikings in Mandalorian culture. That used to be even a stronger idea in the EU idea of Mandalorians, but that's still very present in the term. Like, they kind of share a cultural ethos, I guess. But this just feels so right to me, seeing Mandalorians working the sails and all that kind of stuff. I know we don't see them doing that until a little bit later, but it just all looks so cool. Also, these are just like some Fallout Mandalorians. They've been living. It's like they came out of a vault and they've been living in a wasteland. I love the Mad Max look of everybody here, and it's all cool. Some of my favorite things about season 3 are these just big, huge spectacle set piece ideas, that story-wise don't impact just a whole lot, but they're so cool. So we include them, cool, and we're thankful for it.
Yeah, they're so cool, dude. They claim to have lived on Mandalore since the Purge, and they immediately pledge loyalty to Bo-Katan, right? Because Bo-Katan was the leader last time they were there. They haven't left. They've just been surviving on the surface.
Yeah.
And so later we cut to on the barge as they're sailing across the devastated wasteland, and they're sharing a meal at a table. And Bo ends up making a major confession here. She explains that she surrendered to Gideon during the Purge, and the Empire promised that if Mandalore surrendered and disarmed, civilian lives would be spared. And as part of the agreement, she gave Gideon the Darksaber, and he broke that promise and destroyed Mandalore anyway. Now, everything that, if you look on Wikipedia and all that, it says the Great Purge and the Night of 1,000 Tears happened after the original trilogy. Even based on this conversation, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
This would have to have happened, to me, right after what the events that we saw on Star Wars Rebels or during the original trilogy, because the Empire's still like a strong thing.
Yeah. She has the Darksaber at the end of Rebels, and she doesn't have it at the beginning of The Mandalorian. Like, it's as simple as that. The math doesn't math.
Yeah.
I think it definitely, I'm with you. This really speaks to, like, right before the original trilogy is where I would place it. And I love that this is a burden kind of placed on Bo-Katan emotionally, because, like, by all accounts, she's making the right choice in doing that, right? I mean, she's, like she said, the entire army had already been obliterated. Like, defeat was a foregone conclusion. There was nothing else they could do, and it's like all she did was just kind of take one to her pride to spare the lives of people. So she thought. And I get that that's, looked down on in Mandalorian from the view of the other Mandalorians. And I get that that's kind of culturally not what you do and things like that. But it's not like, I mean, it's a very relatable choice, right, that Bo made. So I like that it's something that it's a burden that she has to live with and stuff. But it's still like, it's not like she did something terrible or anything like that.
No, yeah, like she is trying to save her people. I mean,
right.
it's just
like
simple as that. She did nothing bad.
Yeah, it was a rock and a hard place. Like, there wasn't going to be a good outcome either way.
Like, you could argue that she betrayed what it means to be a Mandalorian, because, they're all about fighting, going at, like, we see this with Paz at the end, right?
Like, to the death kind of
an
deal.
An honorable death. Yeah.
Like, I'm going to keep swinging as long as I can kind of deal.
Right. I think she saw, like, this would be the end of us forever if I don't do this.
Like, we have to live on to fight another day kind of deal. Like, So I love that. I love the way that they set that up for Bo. She's one of my favorite characters in Star Wars. I really like her whole journey.
Also, like, it's not very clear how old she is. If you go based off of what it's, I think some of, like, the reference materials and stuff say she would be significantly older than Din.
Yeah.
However, I like to think when we first see her in the Clone Wars, putting her around age 16, 17 makes a lot more sense to me, right? And and then she's a little she's what, 6 years older than Den, like
somewhere in there. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, it doesn't make this next scene weird, because there's very clearly, like, romantic tension between Din and Bo, I think.
Of course.
From this scene. So later, Din speaks privately with Bo-Katan. He tells her that the Darksaber means nothing to him. What matters to him are honor, loyalty, character, and he tells her he serves her because of those qualities. And then he tells her, your
and that
song,
rockin' bod. That's another quality I think that gets Din to serve her.
Also, you're so hot.
Yeah. Like, that's that fourth unspoken value there that I'm gonna follow you for.
Also, you're great. Yeah. He says, your song is not yet written, and I would love to sing it with you. That's not what he says, but
but I love that like, it seems like kind of a Mandalorian idiom or something, like kind of a saying.
Yeah, sure.
But there's wisdom in that, right? It's like, hey, don't hang it up yet. Like, you're not dead and in the ground. Like,
we're about to do this thing, baby.
Yeah, you can still, like, you're still working on your personal history.
Exactly.
Like, you just got to keep working at it. So.
Yeah. So the journey to the Forge, the Mandalorians continue traveling towards the Great Forge. Along the way, Axe and Paz nearly fight over their cultural differences as they're playing some sort of strategy game. And, like, Paz has different rules for it than Axe does. And Axe is like, these primitives, they don't know how to play our game. and then they start fighting. And like, Paz, like he typically does, we've seen through this rewatch, he pulls out his knife. He is very quick to anger. And Axe is like, are you serious? I got to give it to Axe. Smart move to do the jetpack knee to the face.
Oh, yeah. No, he
doesn't fight with a helmet.
Here.
Yeah, he does a great job here.
Like, I mean, he's up against Paz. It's a tough, it's a tough outlook either way. But like he does his best
good.
here. It's good.
We're proud of Axworms on this podcast.
Yeah, I love that you put a bunch of Mandalorians on this boat and they all immediately start acting like sailors. It's all, like it's a pirate crew immediately. Like, yeah, Avasti.
What I really liked though too is that Bo and Din kind of let them work their differences out, and as it gets heated, Grogu's the one that stops the conflict by repeatedly saying no. And I love that they listen to him. They're like,
yeah.
We gotta listen to the kid. We can't.
We
can't fight in front of the kids.
Yeah, from the mouths of babes or whatever. Yeah, but it's also like I like that Bo and Din, they're talking about how like nobody can step in here. We just have to let this go, like basically because of our culture. But then Grogu has that Jedi bit that he's still kind of got access to, and that's what causes him to get in the middle, I think.
And I also love, too, this next part. Totally unnecessary. This did not need to happen at all in the episode. When they get closer to Sundari, all of a sudden, a giant kaiju, once again, bursts out, slams its giant tail on their barge, and it forces them into the cave. They could have just stopped and got out.
Yeah, they could have. But Jon Favreau saw an opportunity to get like a fifth, or is this like a fifth or sixth kaiju in for this season? It's a lot. It's a lot. But I love it. I mean, I'm here
why
for
not?
It. I think weird.
That's the best. Some people say this is a bad quality about The Mandalorian. I actually think it's one of its greatest strengths.
I do too.
It's one of the like, why not do it?
Yeah.
And just have fun with it. This isn't meant to be Andor, people.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, this is meant to be fun. And it is. It is. It's okay to have fun in Star Wars. And this is so fun.
There's this, I think like this is about to be a weird tangent that we may not have time for. We're already lengthy in this recording. But I'm like, I think just like the cinema sins culture of like these weird ideas
I'm
from
done with that.
Film theory, like in film school, making it into like popular media criticism and stuff, I think is kind of, it's been detrimental because like, yeah, sure, this kaiju is not like integral to the plot. You could cut it and nothing really changes and stuff like that. They could just arrive and get out of the boat. But then you miss the opportunity to have this awesome crystal monster smash things,
right?
It's like it's some stuff like, yeah, you don't have to have dessert, but it's awesome. So
that's
like
great point.
Like too much of it is bad for sure.
Sure.
You get fat and all that kind of stuff, but
the image of all of them itself flying off the barge that's being destroyed in their jetpacks was great.
Exactly.
And I will say I was so worried for Grogu this whole time. Like from here until the end, I'm like, oh, this poor baby. Like you should not be here. Like you should have been dropped off at Peli Motto's before coming in. Like there's no reason for you to be here.
Like IG-12 notwithstanding, it's not a place for babies.
No. So inside the caves near the forge, Beskar armored Imperial commandos attack. Axe escapes through a little hole in the ceiling to get reinforcements, and Paz gives him cover to do that. Din leads the Mandalorians into a hidden Imperial facility, and then
what? There's an Imperial facility.
Nobody knew that was there.
Yeah. So that's kind of a big deal. Like even Bo-Katan and people from here didn't know. And
I love that the TIE interceptors are hanging from the ceilings like bats. I think that is one of the coolest visuals of like, of course they store their interceptors like that.
Well, it's also like it gives the image of them just being able to, they're just ready to go. They can just drop off and they're so cool. Up to speed. So cool.
So the doors suddenly seal and Din becomes separated and is captured. Honestly, so here's what I think happened behind the scenes. I think Pedro could not get out of filming The Last of Us. Right here would have made so much more sense for getting to rip his helmet off.
Yeah, because like
When
he's
he's
got
captured.
him, right?
Yeah.
This is Din at his lowest for the season. He's captured. Like there's it appears like kind of defeat is happening. So yeah, like rip his helmet off, and then you get this whole, he can go through the whole climax of the season with his helmet off and everything, and afterwards you got to have a conversation about like, yeah, no, you got your helmet removed, but like the way that you acted through all of this was so much more Mandalorian than not removing your helmet. Like
Right.
it's reinforcing all these ideas we've been exploring the whole season about
Exactly.
finding this middle ground between the groups and all of that.
Exactly.
Would have been a perfect opportunity, but
Yep.
yeah, maybe it could have just they just didn't have access to Pedro's face.
I don't think they did. I don't think that they did. Because there's another scene in the finale where I think we would have seen Pedro as well. In like Grogu's baptism, basically. I think we would have seen his face. So Gideon arrives wearing Beskar Dark Trooper suit. I'm not going to lie. I think it's awesome. I think his suit is so cool. I don't like the sounds that it makes.
That's
a
a little
cheesy.
Like the
Yeah, it's like, it's a little much.
it's a little
but-
RoboCop, I think.
Yeah, yeah. But I like the way that it looks. It's very Darth Vader.
Yeah, it's like Gideon decided, he's like, you know what? I saw this Vader guy, and I kind of wanna, do. I mean, he's been doing that a little bit the whole time anyway, with the way, like the chest plate and stuff he wears.
Sure.
But yeah, it's cool. I also just like this is very comic booky. It's very sci-fi fun. It's like, of course the villain has a super suit that he's bringing to the last fight,
Right.
Like he's become Lex Luthor basically.
Right, exactly. So he explains his philosophy. Every great culture has something valuable: the Jedi, the cloners, the Mandalorians. And he intends to combine their strengths to create the ultimate Imperial army.
Yeah. That's why I was saying, like, it seems like it is just kind of the evolution of that Dark Trooper idea. Yeah. He's trying to make the perfect Imperial war machine.
Right. And so he does his old grandstanding, and then Bo and the Mandalorians end up escaping. Paz Vizsla stays behind to hold the line, and he fights off numerous Imperial commandos alone. Oh. He kills all of them, to the point where he even like bashes them in with his overheated gun, which was great.
Yeah. He's like out of ammo, and he just starts throwing it at them.
Oh, okay. I was going to say this too earlier when they were fighting the Beskar Imperial troopers. Mm-hmm. I wish, this is just, again, a little bit more Monday morning quarterbacking here, but I wish Mandalorians had, as part of their arsenals, like a little, like a sword, like a Beskar sword, but for close combat, because like just shooting blasters at each other when you're, both sides are wearing Beskar doesn't do anything, right? They're just bouncing off. So that would force you to get in close. And we do see that a little bit, but I would love if they had like maybe even like one of those like curved Egyptian swords or whatever, like Mandalorians have their own like Beskar sword for close combat. Like, kind of like Dune with like, that's the same concept of Dune. Like the projectiles can't go through the shield, so that's why they fight close combat with the swords. Yeah, it would be the same thing.
I think the blasters call the worms too. I think do that, but
right, whatever. But like, because up close you can get in between the armor plates and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's the idea of the vibroblades, right? Like it's
it's just they're like, not as cool. Like they're so small, and
they are. I mean,
not as cool.
You could, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just like something that they all kind of like visually have.
It would have to be something that is carried on the jetpack. Yes, that's sort of that.
You like pull it out
size, and then maybe it's almost like a
short
like
sword,
the nightstick baton type things.
Sure,
that, like flip out. They're like retractable. You could do something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just for for Beskar on Beskar action. Yeah.
I think because they like basically their whole thing is how to fight Jedi. That's how their arsenal has like evolved and stuff.
Yeah.
you probably want to stay as far away from the Jedi as possible. Like you don't really want to get into lightsaber range.
Yeah. No.
So
that's why we have a jetpack to get away.
Yeah, it may be why the hand-to-hand weapons are not really what's prioritized, but
yeah, but like this at this point in the timeline, they're not really fighting Jedi; they're fighting each other all the time. So it's like you would have liked to seen that next step of evolution in Mandalorian armor.
We see a lot of the art, like on Sundari and stuff, depicts Mandalorians fighting with swords, just like in like more like knight type Mandalorian helmets,
gladiator looking helmets. So Paz stays behind to hold the line, and after defeating all the Imperial commandos alone, then 3 Praetorian guards arrive. I gotta say, this is the best looking Praetorian guards. I think it's like it's halfway in between what we see from the original trilogy to the sequel trilogy. These versions look the best to me.
I'm a sucker for the original design that's so like drapey and streamlined
How would you
looking.
even move in that? There's a reason we've never seen them actually fight is because you can't even turn the helmet. You just go straight.
But I mean,
on.
like they're basically wearing just like a robe. So I think other than your neck mobility and stuff, there's probably very high mobility in the original costume. But
you're just doing the Batman the whole time.
Yeah. Just swinging your head around stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I in the Lords of the Sith book, I really liked learning about the like Imperial Guard that's with Palpatine and Vader and stuff, and all of that. But anyway, here
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's a good book actually. It's not like a super consequential story ultimately, but just for learning about the dynamic between Palpatine and Vader and stuff. It's a good book.
Yeah. So
R.I.P. Paz though. It's like he gives such a valiant effort. They really do let him have a great moment to go out on. And you know, he does his sacrifice is meaningful because the rest of the group they're able to escape. So
yeah. And his dead lifeless body is left behind as the episode ends.
Yeah. It was a hard shot to cut to black on.
It was.
Cool.
But man, it was such a great episode, and I think it sets up the finale so well.
Yeah.
And you know, the finale is going to be action packed. We're going to have a lot to talk about with our friends from Sky Talkers. It's going to be a great time as we wrap up this Mandalorian rewatch that started all the way back in June of 2025. Yeah. We are finally here. You know. And then we'll transition into the next part of our schedule, which is going to be a lot of fun. And I think, you know, you guys are going to be happy as we head into the Mandalorian and Grogu. But this is it, man. This is it. We've made it to the finale of the Mandalorian.
Yeah, and like this episode was really important to dive into, and hope everybody stuck with us up top just to get into all the Shadow Council stuff, because I think that's super consequential going
what people
forward.
Wanted to talk about the most, probably.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Just one more reminder about Anakin's Army and the Fight Like a Jedi campaign. We would love if you would go throw some love and support that way. They got the information about that in the description. If you like what we do, we'd love if you'd leave us a 5-star rating and review, and don't forget about the Maul Shadow Lord contest going on regarding reviews. You got to give 5 stars, and then include that code word Dathomir, and we'll get you entered to win that amazing prize with the Maul lightsaber and stand and all that kind of stuff. And then if you want more bonus content, you like what we do and want more of it, as well as access to a really cool like Discord community and all kinds of stuff, you can join our patreon.com/MandalorianWatch. For just $2, you get access to all of that. We'll be back very soon to finish up the Mandalorian rewatch with the season 3 finale before going into Shadow Lord and our Mandalorian and Grogu hype episodes and all of that kind of stuff. So make sure you're subscribed and follow along. We'll see you very soon, but until then, keep the watch.